we're not there yet. No, we're going to actually give incentives to burning tar to heat your house. Biden would have loved for that to exclusively benefit the union. They've got very cheap labor in China.
Yeah. Is there an exhaust pipe on there?
Drawn up by absolute monkeys.
Guys, we're here in Vancouver, Canada at the Everything Electric Show, and I've got a very special guest here. For a lot of my followers, you may already follow Brian, but he's got a really cool YouTube channel covering all things to do with EV analytics.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the battery chemistries, I cover the factories, I get into the analysis side more than just reading the news.
Awesome. We're going to put a link to Brian's channel, FutureAza, down in the description, so make sure you give Brian a follow and a lot of likes. Make sure you check out his channel. He's got some wonderful content. Well, let's start off with your perspective on where things are at, kind of the current temperature check on the EV situation.
Oh, that's a great question. So in terms of where we're at now, better than I feared we'd be. There's brands that are doing well. In the US, of course, Tesla's doing very well, but when you get to Europe, you'll see a lot of brands moving some serious units. You'll even see Ford selling a fair number. I've seen Mach-E's as taxis in England and Ireland, which is, I don't know, I thought that was kind of surprising.
Ford product, yeah.
Yeah, a Ford EV. Then you get over into Asia, and I mean, it's already at half the new sales are plug-ins, and that's huge. So where are we at? The prices have gotten to the point where they're pretty good. The availability's gotten pretty good. The availability of models across different segments is pretty good. So I'd say the current state is pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're starting to see a little bit more kind of openness and adoption. I feel like the attitude of the general public is kind of shifting more positively. Apart from all of the, what's going on with all the companies and Legacy and the newcomers and all that, I'm just thinking like the general attitude of the consumer is being a little bit more EV friendly. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. When I knew a lot of people who were early Tesla adopters, and they would have people who just hated them. I've experienced no hate for driving a Model Y and no love. It's just a car now.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
And that's really the target.
That's the target. And
normalize it. It is what it
I've
is.
known a lot of people say, well, I never see any electric cars. And I said, you don't see them because a lot of them just look like cars. If you look at a new Ioniq, it's kind of a weird looking car, but then you look at the other Hyundais and Kias on the road and they look kind of weird too and not that different. So unless you know what you're looking for, a Lightning, only if you know to look for the different headlight bar,
right,
would you even know that it's electric.
Yeah, you almost have to check badging. Is there an exhaust pipe on there? Is there not?
And now so many people have had experience with them or own them that it's not weird anymore. So yeah, I'd say acceptance is way up there. People don't have as many of the irrational fears as they used to. But there's still some.
Right. So where do you see, Brian, I'd love to get kind of your angle on import EVs. Like right now we're actually sitting, you guys can't see, but we're actually sitting in the VinFast booth, which is an all-electric EV company based out of Vietnam who's selling their cars here in Canada and in the United States. What's your kind of perspective, opinion on import EVs like a VinFast or perhaps Honda that would be producing an EV and so on versus the domestic? So we've got our Rivians and our Lucids that are made here, and of course Tesla that are made here, boots on ground, and of course General Motors is building EVs here in America and Canada as well.
And Mexico.
And Mexico, yeah, that's right.
Throughout North America. It is a single free trade block, so right, it all counts.
Mach-E, I think, is Mexico, right?
Yeah, the Mexi is made in Mexico.
The Mexi.
So it is, I would, regardless of the brand, I'd put them in two different categories: domestic gas and domestic, domestic legacy and domestic pure EV. I think we've seen them scaling back ambitions from Ford and GM. Stellantis, I don't think has ambitions, at least not in North America.
We'll see.
We'll see. So what I think we'll see is, Rivian is pushing forward very aggressively. Lucid is pushing forward as aggressively as they can.
Yep.
There are missteps. We can blame them for those, but at least they're trying. Mm-hmm. Then you've got your import brands, and I am just a fan of the pure EV plays. VinFast, of course, there's room to criticize, but they are they're pure EV.
That's right.
They're trying to build a factory in the US to domesticate production. And so could VinFast be a more American car than a Ford or GM? Ford and GM are really not as American as you might think.
Yeah.
So then you get to BYD. They still make a lot of hybrids. But the targets, it was recently announced, 2026 is the end of ICE in China.
Right.
Because the new targets are so aggressive that you'd have to get 70 miles to the gallon on a gas car or equivalent.
Yeah.
And even some EVs, some European EVs that are big and heavy, won't qualify because they're not efficient enough with their
Right.
electric drive, with
Okay.
their pure electric drivetrain.
Really?
Yeah, if you
Wow.
a Hummer cannot be sold in China after 2026 because it's too inefficient.
Yeah.
You can pay a fine to still buy one.
Right.
If you want to buy a Rolls Royce that burns gas, you can, but you're going to pay for it. So, what is my opinion on the imports? All these companies, the world's gotten a lot smaller. So what we're seeing is the cost of labor. They've got very cheap labor in China.
Yeah.
Labor's only 10, 12% of the car. The reason Chinese cars can be built so much cheaper is because they've got their entire process dialed in. They've got their whole factory built from nothing, and it gives them a huge advantage.
Well, they seem really committed to EV. We saw in Norway. I think Norway, what are they, 90%, 97% EV now?
94.
94%, yeah.
So
Unreal.
Norway is doing it right. What they're saying is we don't have a domestic manufacturing base to protect.
Right.
What we have is people. And what we have is a lot of electricity. We have a lot of hydro. So we're going to make EVs the big thing. We'll take them from China. We'll take them from the US. We'll take them from, from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
In the case of Dacia or however it's said. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of, that gives them a lot of opportunities to do what's right regardless of who benefits because they benefit. And in China, because they are all in, that means that they're willing to support the battery manufacturing. They're willing to support new factories. They're willing to do what they can to help it.
Right. Yeah. Kind of leads me into my next question, Brian. And I know it's a hot topic, especially this time of year, because it is election season. But kind of what are your thoughts, before we get into kind of domestic politics here in the United States, just kind of overall, what is your thoughts of the impact of politics on the adoption of EV and our transition away from fossil fuels and into sustainable energy powered vehicles? Politics
controls everything, doesn't it? I mean, the politicians make the rules. Everyone else just has to follow them. So whatever the politics of your country are, if you're China and you set a zero emission target, you have no choice. You must move to hit it. And then they will also support that. The trick you get is in some countries, the politics changes faster than the rules that they make. So you'll see, like in the US, we've got this very aggressive credit available for battery manufacturers.
Yep.
Which may be repealed before almost anyone can take advantage of it. Tesla's one of the few companies that is getting the IRA manufacturing credit for battery cells and packs.
Right.
And so what happens then? When China says this is the policy, you can count on it sticking around for as long as it takes.
Right. So those policies can be taken advantage of and implemented and make an impact.
Certainty is what businesses crave. Once we saw that there was a very real chance that in the next year or two, the IRA could be repealed, the battery manufacturers that started investing in the US to build these factories said, we're going to pump the brakes a little bit because it may not make sense to build these out if we're about to lose $45 per kilowatt hour off the back end.
Right. So let me ask you this. We've got multiple levels of government. So we've been just kind of talking about federal level, but what about like state, provincial level? Like, do you see the kind of these smaller markets? So the argument is that a state knows its market better than the feds do, and a municipality knows its market better than the state, and so on and so forth. What would you say is the role of those levels of government in implementing things like rebates or mandates or things like that? Should it be a federal mandate? Should it be state? Should it be municipal incentives? Like, where do you see that playing the biggest amount of impact?
Sure. I would say at the city level, the best you can do is get chargers in. Infrastructure.
Right.
Make permitting easier. That's something a city can do. At the state level, it comes down to what you want to push, I suppose. There are things that can be done. I do think something has to be done at the federal level because there will always be backwater cities, backwater states that say, no, we're going to actually give incentives to burning tar to heat your house. Those places, if it was legal, would exist. Because maybe they have a... Here's a crazy thing that I am a little concerned about.
Okay.
Asphalt is so cheap because the tar that they use is basically a waste product, a byproduct of manufacturing gasoline.
Really? Okay.
When we stop manufacturing gasoline, what's that going to do to the cost of our roads?
Road building increases. Or we transition to more concrete.
More concrete,
I don't know.
which is more carbon intensive and more expensive.
Right.
I don't know. These are knock-on effects. I think it's too soon to worry about those. We'll still need fossil fuel for commercial travel. There is a electric airplane here. It can fly for 45 minutes with no cargo and 2 people.
Right.
We're not there yet. I'm not saying we need to get rid of fossil fuel. I'm saying we're burning way too much of it. It's so valuable to our society, to our civilization, that setting it on fire seems like the worst thing to do.
And to do it in a, there's, personally, I believe that you can utilize fossil fuels in a more responsible manner versus recklessness. And I think what we should really be striving towards is, rather than these knee-jerk reactions of like, let's cut everything off and kind of like crush the economy in the interim, is like, okay, hang on. Why don't we reduce the reckless use of it, the kind of some carelessness out there, I would say, and kind of encourage responsibility. I think there is some of the technologies and some avenues that government can take to kind of help curtail that. But I think like dropping the hammer of like, you can't buy this type of vehicle, like I don't know. For me, people, and again, coming from background of sales and in Legacy Auto, I mean, just kind of the response of a consumer when you're told, no, you have to do this, is they're going to be like, no, pump the brakes, versus an incentive of, hey, here's all the benefits and here's why you should do it. What do you think?
Did you ever sell a car that had a gas guzzler tax?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. I mean, that's a policy that works. If
people still bought them.
People still bought them.
The ones that really wanted them.
Yeah. I once bought a car that had one.
Okay.
I bought a 99 Viper showroom new. I paid $5,000.
Good car though.
Yeah.
Good car.
I paid $5,000 for my gas guzzler tax, and I looked at it and I said, oh, yeah. You can still buy, in China, you can still buy a gas car after 2026. You're just going to have to pay for it.
Right.
Because you are doing, the problem we're having with Legacy pulling back so aggressively on EVs is every Ford Lightning that's sold, they lose a little bit of money, or at least don't make any money. But they're not taking sales away from Ram or Silverado. They're taking sales away from gas F-150, which is where their profit is.
Yeah.
So they're going to lose a profitable sale and trade it for an unprofitable one. At that point, they're like, well, why would we sell one EV when we can sell 10 hybrids with the same battery?
Good point.
Or 7 hybrids with the same battery? Our customers get the same credit. So my big problem with these policies from the state level up is they are drawn up by absolute monkeys. I swear I do not know how these policies are written, because the incentives are all wrong. It shouldn't be that the cost of the car or the weight. It should be the efficiency. That way if you really want the maximum benefit, you're going to get something like a rear-wheel drive Tesla.
Right.
That should get a higher incentive than a performance one. And because it comes down, efficiency is what matters. How many power plants can we avoid building by having more? We just need to consume a little bit less. And if you could just make EVs 5%, 10% more efficient, if the whole nation switches, that's entire power plants that don't have to come online.
Absolutely. Now let's get into something a little bit more touchy. I did give you a little warning, but so let's talk politics. So right now we are in a very heated kind of political climate. It's Trump versus Harris, and I just wanted to kind of get your perspective again, kind of bird's eye view, as far as where do you see kind of the EV industry going, pending a Trump victory or a Harris victory? Maybe we'll start with maybe Harris first. Sure. I guess.
So there's a popular idea that the last 4 years the government agencies have been crawling up Elon's backside over anything they can. And I haven't seen much of that. The FAA gave them clearance to fly after recent mishaps quicker than they would have anyone else.
This is SpaceX.
SpaceX. Yeah. And why? Well, why did they get special treatment? No, I think that's fair treatment, because they've done so many of these launches that it makes sense to cut them some slack. The EPA's cut them slack, the FAA.
Track record.
The track record. It would be, if the direction was to shut Elon down, they would just say, nope, the rules are the rules, we're not giving you an exception.
Right.
That would hurt Elon. They're not doing that because that'd be dumb. On the flip side, you've got the IRA has been passed. That is money. I'm sure Biden would have loved for that to exclusively benefit the union.
Right.
But you cannot write that bill in a way that's legal and still does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a result, Tesla's been the largest beneficiary of the IRA. They're making batteries, they're selling cars, they're doing all those things, they're deploying chargers, all that helps. Under Harris, I suspect all of those programs would continue. I believe Harris doesn't care for Elon, but that's irrelevant to the discussion because it's, she's, what is she going to do? They need SpaceX. This is the most American car company. They've certainly got to
100%.
recognize that.
Yep. And the number one selling car in the world.
And the best-selling model in the world.
Model Y.
It is a thing of pride. I'd like it if she showed that more, but I can understand for political reasons why maybe she doesn't.
Right.
Then you've got, if Trump wins, Trump likes Elon right now. He doesn't always like him.
Right.
He's been very, very aggressive to him in the past. The SEC fined Elon $20 million under Trump.
Yeah.
The funding secured thing was $20 million from Elon,
Right.
and Elon was kicked out of the chairmanship of the board
Yep.
under Trump.
Yeah.
So let's not pretend like one party is better than the other. And I was, after that,
That's a good point.
after the fireside chat that Elon and Trump had, 2 days later, he was back on the campaign trail saying, we got to slow down on EVs.
Right.
We got to slow down.
That's
The
right.
bridges can't
Yeah.
handle them.
Yeah.
And I thought,
Doesn't make it's
So
bridges.
I think as a politician, he says what's convenient for the moment. And that makes it impossible to know what he'll actually do.
Right.
And I see people say, well, he'll just, make it better. Right? I don't want a guess. I don't deal in guesses. I analyze. I'm an analyst. I need data.
Yeah.
And it's not there. We know he has said he wants to repeal the IRA. Tesla would survive great. Tesla would survive fine.
Well, Elon said, he's like, I wish there was no rebates for anybody, for
Right.
gas or electric.
But the gas ones are not going away.
No.
Never, never, never. There will be one drop left of oil and it'll still be subsidized.
A lot of hands in pockets.
Right. There's too much money in there to not get subsidies. So to not be able to buy politicians. So if the IRA is repealed, Tesla will remain the number one EV seller in the US, maybe the number one EV seller in the world. But adoption will suffer.
Yeah.
All these other companies are going to slow to a crawl because they can't afford to do it anymore. They can't afford it now, but it'll become a deeply negative proposition.
Right. And there's a lot at stake as far as, we're talking about different industries, the trickle-down economics of adjusting these things. You've got manufacturers that have spent billions of dollars, rejigging their infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that go to waste either. You've got, and then also too, we're talking about, the United States of America, but there are other global pressures. And if China, for example, is, really ramping, we don't want the US to fall behind. We want pride. We want to remain the world leader. Like, let's, encourage our companies like, the younger companies that are maybe not a Tesla, but, the Lucids and Rivian, of course, right? And these are companies that, Rivian especially, man, we can be super proud of what they're doing. Phenomenal product. And, building factories, they're expanding Normal, and Georgia,
Georgia is
kind of
on hold, but the plan is to expand in Normal, which is, by the way, a huge facility. They got that from Mitsubishi for like $12 million, something outrageous. And then, and you've got Aptera trying to come online. You've got Lucid is ramping into the Gravity right now. Hopefully that'll allow them to get to the mid-size, which is where I expect to see Corey Steuben from Monroe and Associates see his work shine through. And China is already eating our lunch. We used to be the most advanced country, and we have ceded that title to others.
Well, we got to bring it back.
We got to bring it back, and
tools are there.
No matter who wins in November, Tesla will be fine. Our country will be fine. You'll see people on social media saying this is if one wins or the other wins, it's the end.
Yeah.
And
extremism.
I've been hearing that since the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm still here. So
We're
unless
still
this
here.
is purgatory.
Yeah. We're rocking and rolling.
But it does feel like it.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts
Yeah.
with everybody here. Guys, make sure you go and follow Brian. I'll put a link to all of his socials down in the description, so make sure you hit that and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Not only my channel, but Brian as well. I'm sure you'll find it very, very useful. And Brian, just want to thank you once again. Much appreciated, man.
Of course, thanks, Jack.
See you guys in the next video.